United States and China seem to be edging ever closer to confrontation over the release of the deadly Wuhan virus on the unsuspecting world by China and the Chinese Communist Party's deliberate and deceitful cover-up. Chinese leader Xi Jinping today escalating tensions between the two countries, calling on his nation's military to, quote, explore ways and means of training and preparing for war, end quote. Xi's comments come after a recent internal Chinese report warning Beijing they need to be prepared for the potential of armed conflict with the United States. Chinese Communist Party officials have made it clear over recent days they will utilize the Wuhan virus pandemic they helped create to achieve their goal of global domination. China's foreign minister telling the United States to stop what it calls its wishful thinking of trying to change China. All of this as the Chinese military reportedly ready 2 new aircraft carriers for deployment off the coast of Taiwan. And China continues to push ahead with the effective takeover of Hong Kong later this week. The U.S. response to these actions so far have been diplomatic, measured, even mooted. President Trump and his administration threatening to impose economic sanctions against China should they choose to continue their provocative rhetoric and actions against the Western world.
Secretary Pompeo would likely be unable to certify that Hong Kong maintains a high degree of autonomy, and if that happens, there will be sanctions that will be imposed on Hong Kong and China. It's hard to see how Hong Kong could remain the Asian financial center that it's become if China takes over.
And for more reaction from the White House and the latest on China's crackdown against democracy in Hong Kong, we turn to our own Susan Lee in New York.
The Chinese foreign minister says that the U.S. and China are on the brink of a Cold War over coronavirus and what he calls political foreign forces supporting the Hong Kong pro-democracy movement. More protests planned Wednesday outside of Hong Kong's government buildings downtown, expected to attract tens of thousands once again after protests erupted this weekend with the familiar scenes of tear gas and water cannons protesting a controversial national security law which would allow Beijing to independently write laws for the territory without Hong Kong's input and installing Chinese military personnel on the city's streets in order to enforce them. Many see this as an end to Hong Kong's autonomy promised for 50 years after it was handed back to Chinese rule in 1997.
I think China's making a big mistake, frankly. I think taking over Hong Kong's national security parameters and judgments was a mistake. You're supposed to have one country and 2 systems. And now we're seeing an attempt, I think, to have one country and only one system. That takes away a lot of freedom in Hong Kong. That will have a very bad financial effect on Hong Kong, I might add.
Meantime, a bipartisan Senate bill is being proposed that would sanction Chinese officials, entities, and banks that enforce this new national security law, while the White House is weighing the use of the Hong Kong Democracy and Human Rights Act signed by President Trump last year. And this requires Beijing to prove Hong Kong is being left independent, or the White House could revoke some of the favorable trade policies the U.S. currently extends to Hong Kong.
He said to me that he's displeased with China's efforts and that it's hard to see how Hong Kong can remain a financial hub if China takes over. So
Which means what? Would the United States change its relationship with Hong Kong?
So I have no further announcements as to the precise action that the president will be taking, but he did want me to share that with you this morning.
Outspoken media tycoon Jimmy Lai among those that say Hong Kong's fate lies in the hands of President Trump. Lou, back to you.
Susan Lee reporting. Thank you, Susan. And joining us tonight to take all of this up, General Jack Keane, former Vice of Staff of the U.S. Army, retired 4-star General, Fox Business Senior Strategic Analyst. General, good to have you with us. Red Storm rising. She's saying to the People's Liberation Army, prepare for war, and clearly war with the United States. Your reaction?
Well, the Red Storm rising has really been going on for a number of years. It certainly was accelerated when President Xi took over in 2013. The problem is the previous administration and the world at large refused to acknowledge what was really taking place, that Xi wanted to dominate the Asia-Pacific region. He said so in his speeches, and he wanted to replace the United States as the world's global leader. And then he put a military accelerated development program in place, and he became a huge economic predator and intellectual property theft. So all of that has been happening. I will admit, since COVID-19 has taken place, Lou, and because he's been backed into the corner a little bit because of international criticism, he's lashing out more than he has in the past. And now he's meeting with the National Party Congress in Beijing. Some of this, I believe, is posturing, about the threat of war. He doesn't want that. If he had war, he would never be able to achieve any of his objectives that he has for the country. And that would be a risk that would absolutely be unacceptable to the Chinese Communist Party. But nonetheless, he is pushing the envelope, and thankfully so. This administration has a comprehensive plan to deal with it, not just economically, but politically, and also militarily, and also deal with the information operations. And I think we got to lean our shoulders into more of it than what we have. And obviously, because of what has been taking place recently, it's got our attention, it's got our government's attention, it's got our president's attention, and it's got the world's attention.